Good morning. I didn't have to blow a whistle or anything. You all are well trained. Welcome to the 2018 Community College Current Issues Symposium. I want to thank you all for being here, and feel free to grab some more coffee, snacks, and so forth throughout the meeting. Today's symposium is sponsored by the Tarrant County College District, the UNT Bill J. Priest Center for Community College Education, and the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship, or NACCE. I am Beverly Bauer, Director of the UNT Bill J. Priest Center. We are happy to have everyone here today and look forward to an enlightening and engaging conversation on the interesting topic of innovation in the community college. But before we begin, I would like to bring my Dean of the College of UNT, College of Education, to this podium, Dean Bomer, Randy Bomer.
Thank you, Bev, and thank you so much, Bev Bauer, for all of your work on this symposium. And we are very proud as a faculty in the College of Education of the Bill Priest Center and the work of our higher education leadership program to prepare leaders for the kinds of institutions that many of you work in. The way we think about innovation is that we try to be innovative. We innovate in the way we provide education, but it's not enough just for us to be innovative. We have to teach people how to be innovative in other locations so that you can create contexts in which faculty can be innovated so that they can teach their students to be innovators in their lives in a rapidly changing world. So really, it's not sufficient for any one of us to be an innovator. We really have to create worlds of innovation all around us. And so that's the kind of work that the Bill Priest Center and our College of Education try to engage with. We also realize as a university, the University of North Texas, that we are partners with so many of you who work in community colleges in this region, and that we are in business together. And so we're proud of that partnership, eager to be closer partners and more cooperative partners with you in the future. So thank you so much for your day, and I'm looking forward to this symposium.
All right, thank you, Dean Bomer. And now I would like to bring a welcome from Dr. Rebecca Corbin, who's the Executive Director of NACCE.
Well, good morning, everyone, and I want to extend a special welcome to the guests that have joined us. You're actually participating, having your forum at the conclusion of the NACCE annual conference, and I'm very pleased to tell you that we were delighted to partner with Tarrant County College District. They did a wonderful job of education and professional development, and we had a lot of fun as well. I just wanted to begin first of all, extending my great appreciation to Dr. Bauer and all of the distinguished people on the stage for really sharing a little bit of this time with NACCE, and many of you in the room are NACCE members, so this will sound like a repeat to you, but NACCE is an educational association. We have over 300 community colleges all over the country, about 2,000 active professionals serving 3 million students. So we make quite an impact in a couple of different ways. Our primary focus is on entrepreneurial teaching, on entrepreneurial leadership, and on ecosystem development. So we stay mostly in that lane of entrepreneurship, and when Dr. Bauer spoke to me, and we work with the Chancellor's office to think about how this connected to what you're going to do, everything that we do is really around innovation. And when we were talking about the things that NACCE was working on and some of the priorities that you all have, it just coincided actually with the publication of our new book. And so we have been working with Stylus Publications now for almost 2 years to create a new resource that will not only be available to presidents and educators, but also those in ed doctoral programs. So I will be following up with your dean to give you, of course, a complimentary copy of this, but truly what's exciting to us about this is there's really not a book that's been written like this before. And my own personal experience going back to a doctoral program in my 40s is that I had a lot of rich life experience. And when I was doing some research, I became fascinated about entrepreneurship. It seemed to me that it was sort of the connective glue that made everything work. And I wanted to really understand it better. And, you know, several years later, I was fortunate to come to NACI and be able to lead that organization with a very dynamic board. And I think what's exciting to me about this conference is I know you have a lot of topics that you're going to cover, but when I really got excited about this project, the first person I really turned to was, Chancellor Jean Giovannini, and I said, we need to write this book, and I've never written a book, I don't know how to do it, and he said, I'll help you do this. And so over the course of 2 years, we learned about publishing, and we just compiled the most sort of innovative thoughts, and our other emeritus chancellor on the panel as well, who is now the CEO of the League for Innovation, Dr. Glasper, was kind enough to write the conclusion of the book. So he read all of the chapters and pulled the threads together. So I just wanted to say a special thank you to you two in particular. And I'm going to keep my comments super brief, but just tell you kind of the spirit of NACI. So as the co-editor, along with Ron Thomas, who is a community college retired president, you have to get endorsements. So I was out there in typical fashion of an advancement person, kind of hustling to get the best ones I could get. And I'm very pleased to tell you that Ted Dintersmith, who wrote a wonderful book, What School Could Be, is one of our full-throated endorsements of the book. And this is very meaningful. A lot of the work that he has done with Tony Wagner at Harvard University is very cutting edge. It's not backward-looking, it's very forward-looking, and as a board, we were celebrating that. We had a wonderful experience, and Dr. Bauer, I'm going to give you a copy of Ted Dintersmith's book so you can read it, and once our book is available, I'm going to send you a copy as well. I'll have these fine leaders sign it as well. So thank you for indulging us, but we couldn't be happier to be here, and I just would wish you, on behalf of NACI, a wonderful program. Thank you for including us.
This has been a really wonderful partnership, and we're certainly glad that NACI has invited us to be their penultimate session, I guess, for their conference. When we were discussing topics for this year's symposium, we looked at previous symposium that we'd have, and I know that a number of you in the room have been to some of our previous symposiums. We noted that community colleges always seem to be the leaders in looking at new ideas and new approaches to education. So we decided perhaps this is the year to do community colleges Innovate. I'm pleased that we were able to bring together such a fine panel of leaders who have played important roles in innovating in community colleges. Now, since many of us are local and not everyone is local, but there are two gentlemen on the stage who are well known to a lot of people in this room. So I will be doing some introductions to them, to everyone, but I wanted to get some interesting information that maybe not everybody would know. So I asked each of our speakers today to tell me something a little bit different, maybe that I wouldn't be able to Google about them. And they each did. So I'm going to share with you some information, but I'm not going to tell you who told me what. Okay? So I want you to think about that and see if they, during this symposium, maybe you can kind of figure out which one is which, and at the end, then I'll be glad to share that information with you. So one of our speakers today is a hiking and poetry enthusiast. Another of our speakers is a cyclist who once upon a time had the pleasure of throwing out the first pitch at a Major League Baseball game. We have another speaker with us who is in training to be an Apple detective. And we'll make sure that he lets you know what an Apple detective is. And one of our speakers comes from a very big, close-knit family. His mother was one of 7 children. His father was one of 17 children. And he had the pleasure to go to elementary school with 43 of his first cousins. So before we leave today, let's see if we can figure out who is who. But let me go ahead and introduce each of our panelists today. First, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Glasper. He served as Chancellor of the Maricopa Colleges from 2003 to 2016. He is currently President and CEO of the League for Innovation for Community Colleges. Nationally, he has served as an advisory board member for the Center for Community College Student Engagement, the Community College Research Center at Teachers College, the Educational Testing Center, and as well has served on the Board of Visitors for the Air Force Air University. He is also a member of the Homeland Security Academic Advisory Council. He's been active in his community on the board of the Arizona Community Foundation and the Sandra Day O'Connor Institute, whose mission is to advance civics education, civic engagement, and civil discourse. He received his doctorate in higher education finance from the University of Arizona. Our first panelist, Dr. Gene Giovannini, before becoming Tarrant County College Chancellor in 2016, he was also working in the Maricopa College system. He was the founding president of Maricopa Corporate College and also served as president for 11 years of the Gateway Community College. He has served as a board member on the American Association of Community Colleges and also board chair of NACCE. His extensive experience in workforce, industrial, and economic development programs have enabled him in 2006 to lead to the creation of the Center for Entrepreneurial Innovation, a comprehensive business incubator located in Phoenix. He received his doctorate in community college education from Virginia Tech. In 2014, panelist Dr. Joe May became the 7th Chancellor of the Dallas County Community College District. As the first member of his family to attend college, he realized the profound impact that higher education had not only on his life, but also in society. This background inspired him to help start and then become the first founding president of Rebuilding America's Middle Class, a national consortium of community colleges which is dedicated to ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to pursue the American dream. In working toward the goal of rebuilding the middle class, Dr. May has worked closely with public school districts, with charter schools, with career academies, and early college programs. He has also been instrumental in creating public-private partnerships, such as the Dallas Minority Small Business Cultivator. Not only has Dr. May worked for local community college interests, but he has worked on community college initiatives around the world, including Japan, the United Kingdom, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. And he received his doctorate in education from Texas A&M Commerce. Dr. Steve Van Osdell is President Emeritus of Walla Walla Community College in Washington State, where he served as president, listen carefully, from 1984 through 2016. 32 years. That deserves applause. And it certainly speaks to his ability as a leader. Dr. Van Osdell is credited with helping the institution provide innovative educational programs that resulted in extraordinarily high levels of student success, for which, in 2013, Walla Walla Community College received the Aspen Institute Award for Community College Excellence. Dr. Van Osdell is nationally known for using the educational resources of Walla Walla to transform the Walla Walla, Walla Walla, okay, let me try that again. The Walla Walla Valley from a rural community in economic decline to a thriving wine region. And if you haven't been out to Washington, to Walla Walla, to the wine region, you should certainly go there. I have made a trip out there, and it's really worth the while. It's a burgeoning place right now. For his work in economic development, he was named a champion of change by the White House. In 2017, he received the award CEO of the Year from the Washington State Association of College Trustees. That same year, the Walla Walla Valley Chamber of Commerce recognized him as the second ever winner of their Vanguard Award, which is presented to an individual who has been a driving force for change, an inspiration to others, and a source for business development and entrepreneurship in the Walla Walla Valley. He received his doctorate from Ohio State University. So as you can see from their credentials, we have an excellent panel today of very knowledgeable individuals who are experienced in community college leadership and innovation and ready to share with us what they have learned as change agents and innovators. I thank them for joining us today. And Dr. Glasper, I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Bowers. Good morning. You know, I have the privilege of standing in front of you as the president and CEO for the League for Innovation, and it is definitely a pleasure. I'm going to take you back in history just a little bit and then kind of set the stage, talk a little bit about what's happening in innovation through my lens, give you a little personal touch, and then we will move to our panels, and we welcome your participation as we move forward. The League for Innovation in the Community College was founded in 1968 by B. Lamar Johnson, a highly distinguished educator at UCLA. And he was also known as the father of the community college. Dr. Johnson helped to shepherd and frame this disruptive innovation. During such time, he witnessed a decade in which the community colleges within the nation doubled. Dr. Johnson studied innovation at two-year institutions and wrote about it in his seminal book, Islands of Innovation. The League was established with a focus in innovation. League members saw themselves as leading institutions and that they did not want to get into politics and/or policy. We leave that to AACC and ACCT and anyone else who'd like to put their toe and body in that water, because as you know, as administrators, presidents, and leaders, when you get involved in politics and policy, it's all in or nothing. So we focused on innovation, and innovations around projects, programs, and practices. Over its 50-year history, Dr. Terry O'Banion, League for Innovation Emeritus President and CEO, also identified important work in helping community colleges become national leaders in information technology and also in leadership development. As we were closing in on the 50 years, I had an opportunity to look back at an ACE article that was published in the summer of 2016. And this article was under the heading of Innovation Practices. It was written by Mark Toner, and it was entitled Community Colleges Creating the Future. In this article, he stated that over the past decade, community colleges have had to chase a shifting series of expectations for outcomes. What was once access is now access, retention, completion, and jobs. This is something that we hear on a daily basis, and this forms our student success agenda. And this is also an agenda that is at the forefront of what we hear from our federal and state levels. In this article, there were two other individuals that were quoted. This is a quote from one of our own, Sandy Shugart, president of Valencia College in Florida. In this article, he stated, community colleges are uniquely positioned for the America that's emerging before us. Another quote was from a gentleman by the name of Nate Johnson. He's the principal consultant for post-secondary analytics. And his quote was, community colleges are becoming even less alike than they used to be. Uniquely positioned and less alike. So I want you to think about this question and think about it in the context of community colleges innovate. Are community colleges align within itself, each person, team, or division working seamlessly together to be innovative and produce desired results? That's going to be the theme for the rest of my comments here this morning. Today's educational environment requires that innovation live across the organization and not just within leadership. Our college's DNA ultimately reflects the fundamental and distinctive characteristics of its culture as developed over time, and often regarded as unchangeable. However, innovation that is meaningful and unique results in vastly improved and sustainable innovation and enhanced business outcomes. At every turn, we are reminded that today's financial, political, and higher education environment poses unprecedented challenges for community college leaders and practitioners. Public financial support and trust in quality, product, and value is eroding. Tuition rates and debt, parent-student willingness or ability to incur debt have reached their limits, and changing student demographics necessitate different models and solutions that new burgeoning investments in learning technologies and alternative providers are delivering. Also, today's learners are significantly different from those of the past, and most are looking for a learning provider that enables them to reach their next desired position in the shortest amount of time. Nationally and globally, there is a great need for reskilling and upskilling, and much of that training is offered by alternative providers because many traditional providers, such as community colleges, are slow to change. Rather than a degree, students and employers are asking for just-in-time education, such as needing to know a skill set in 8 months and a foreign language by Thursday, and purchasing education when it meets their price and their demand points. Learners whose brains are wired for the fast delivery of content, data, and images want hands-on options and practical skills. They prefer digital learning and they dislike lecture classrooms. They want their education customized. They expect to be able to work, learn, and study wherever and whenever they want, and love to explore using other routes, such as designing their own courses of study. This predicament leaves community colleges, leaders, and practitioners having to figure out how to manage their own destinies, achieve future goals through new funding strategies, and change the way they do business by providing enhanced services and innovative solutions to respond to a changing higher education ecosystem, while at the same time increasing student success and eliminating achievement gaps. Higher education delivery and business models need to evolve. And given the rapid pace of changing technologies, regional and state economies, market and workforce conditions, and learner characteristics and preferences, community colleges will need to remain agile and adept at continually evolving their programs, services, and models to remain solvent, to ensure relevancy, and guarantee student success. In essence, they need to innovate. I want to show you one slide here. Think about this. My next comments will talk about the current state of innovation maturity in higher education. And as I go through these next few comments, think about where your institution might be. And are you still waiting for that miracle to happen as you're working on your innovation practices? More than 15 years into higher education reform, and despite good intentions, substantial effort and resources and examples of progress, many higher education institutions have not transformed as they desire. The current situation and the facts on innovation are that 90% of digital transformation projects fail. Over $300 billion is invested annually in innovation with limited means to measure the return on investment. 69% of the time, culture change is the main driver in successful innovation projects. The current situation regarding the culture is this: the culture entrepreneurs face to foster innovation within their own institution is that 1, risk is not valued or rewarded, It takes a long time to bring things to market in the current system. New ways of operating can disrupt existing norms and processes. The current internal processes make change difficult, and there is a lack of access to the innovation landscape, advisors, and knowledge needed to succeed. And last, failure is not an option as a means of learning. Significant and lasting transformation comes not from practitioners, institutions implementing innovation solutions, but rather from practitioners and and institutions learning to manage and mature innovation, resulting in agile institutions that strategically and artfully implement multiple types of innovations. Examples would include program service and process and business model innovations. Significant and transformative innovations occur in a coordinated fashion and continuously over time. Higher education institutions fall within a broad spectrum of innovation maturity and range from non-existent to transformative, with the majority falling somewhere between non-existent and isolated to emerging. Few institutions mature their innovations beyond the emerging point, and this is based on some research done by a group called the Collaboratory. And when they don't move beyond the emerging point, they have called this point the Innovation Valley of Death. And because they are either unaware of what's important or unable to systematize innovation management and execution. In 2012, Gary Shapiro wrote an article for Forbes, and this article was entitled "Innovation in Community Colleges, the Overlooked National Asset." After examining a few community college programs, he suggested that our flexibility and relevance in support of our nation's workforce and the use of innovative strategies for the delivery of telemedicine, of STEM education and learning should lead to a national change in mindset. This week we talked about mindset being a major thrust in entrepreneurship. It's also a major thrust in innovation. He went on to say that we need to create a vision for employment and innovation where we elevate the skilled, the creative, and the willing. At the 2018 League for Innovation Conference, futurist Ken Still proffered that some of the main focus areas influencing the spectrum of community college innovation include the notion of funding for education and also changing demographics. But he also pointed out globalization, artificial intelligence, changes in our industries, and also changes in our markets. He advised that community college leaders cannot maintain the status quo and expect their institutions to be sustainable. Innovation goals are accomplished by building and following an innovation roadmap. An innovation roadmap answers three primary questions. Number one, where is the college now regarding innovation? Number two, which innovation goals would they like to achieve? Number three, what is the plan to achieve these goals? And I ask you to think about, what is your college innovation alignment to move in that direction? I would like to read 11 statements to you as I close, and ask that after each statement you write down on the pad that's on your table if you agree with just a yes or no as to your institution. Keep it personal, keep your own tally, but these are the questions, or these are the statements. Our college definition of innovation is documented and agreed upon by our leadership and team and communicated to all employees. Yes or no? Our innovation definition accounts for continuous improvement of internal operations as well as external customer-facing products and services. Yes or no? Our history of innovation aligns with our definition and provides us with opportunities to improve our innovation approach. Yes or no? We have realistic, measurable, innovation goals, which are documented and assigned to someone responsible for their achievement? Yes or no? We have documented which innovation barriers are in the way of achieving our innovation goals. Yes or no? We have estimated the monetary value of innovation to our college. Yes or no? We have documented assumptions for use as performance metrics and established baselines that track and reflect our innovation progress. Yes or no? We maintain a portfolio of our innovative products and services that serve as a starting point for identifying future opportunities. Yes or no? We view innovation as a business process with an assigned owner, with inputs and activities, outputs and measurable performance metrics. Yes or no? Our college culture values risk-taking, collaboration, teamwork, and initiative. Yes or no? The last question, we know we have the right people in the right innovation-related jobs. Yes or no? I'm not going to ask you how you scored, but I will ask you to consider where your college might fall on this innovation maturity spectrum. Thank you for your encouragement and your support of innovation at your campus. I look forward to your participation, and I invite our first panelist up to make his presentation. Dr. G. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Beverly. Thank you very much. I can't think of a better way in which to conclude the NACCE conference in bringing this together, and so we greatly appreciate that partnership. There are a number of people from the Fort Worth area and Tarrant County that have joined us this morning, so thank you for coming. I want to take a point of privilege and acknowledge I think just two of my governing board members are here today. I wish for them to stand and be recognized. Bill, Louise, please. Thank you for that point of privilege. Tomorrow they do my evaluation. So I'm going to share a couple stories, if you will, and that just went off. There we go. Really talking about innovation that relates to ecosystems and keeping with the theme of the NACCE conference. And this is going to be a Reader's Digest version about a couple initiatives that NACCE had helped support over the years, and then a personal reflection on an initiative that I had experienced in my career. We talked a lot about mindset this week, and if you want to look at the definition that Mr. Gracci offered, and the keys, I think, are the highlighted or the bold words: new, value, and growth. What's the value? What's the purpose? What's the incentive? What's it going to lead to that really provides some form of value or some form of growth? And in doing so, forging the connections in developing your ecosystem, because you will not develop an ecosystem without those connections. So Tom Rue mentioned this week about, often from NC Idea, that, people keep asking him, well, what's the secret sauce to developing an ecosystem? Well, I guess I would offer these very simple questions, and if you can answer those are the ingredients of developing an ecosystem. And so whatever you're looking at, initiative or idea, where do you as an individual or as an organization fit? What's needed? What can we offer to do that? But more importantly, you're not going to develop it all on your own. Not one of us can serve all. We need all to serve each other. What can I do for you? What can you do for me? And often bringing together folks of mutual interest or organizations of mutual interest to partner and really to leverage. And leveraging is the key to ecosystem, because the ecosystem requires more than one, it requires many, and leveraging each other to do so will provide the best results. So I'll spend the next 45 minutes explaining this. No, I'm just kidding. This is just an example, and this could be anything that you doodle, if you will. And this just shows a connection of entities that can form an ecosystem. And so you begin plotting, answering those questions. If you answer those questions, you're going to have the big dots and then the little dots to help support those questions. And once you have all that, then begin drawing the lines or making the connections between them. That's ecosystem development at its very fundamental level. NACCE has had a big impact, certainly in the world of entrepreneurship, but most recently, as we have developed the organization and a members-serving members philosophy and going out and finding funders to help the members serve each other, that in itself inherently has developed a permanent ecosystem, if you will, philosophically of how we go about doing business. And I'll offer, having been on pretty close to NACCE in the last 5 or 6 years, that really has led to a great deal of our success and growth, that philosophy of members serving members, and in so developing those ecosystems. 2 particular examples I want to share, and this is a Reader's Digest version, but the Appalachia region is a very impoverished area, and those folks came together via the support of NACCE to address the needs that they had related to the economic depression in those areas. And they came together and they arrived at, and you can read those, economic opportunities, a ready workforce, critical infrastructure, natural and cultural assets, and leadership and community capacity. They felt those were the things that they needed to land on, that they needed to really develop, if you will, to help them move forward economically in that region. Another one was very different, but similar concept in nature, and this was in California, Northern California, where the community colleges in Northern California came together to talk about how they would respond rapidly to workforce and economic development opportunities. So again, it's a very different, visual, if you will, but those things were, what they tried to connect was workforce development and testing centers and WIBs and employers, curriculum, certifications, and the nature. So what was key in both Appalachia and in California, none of those could have done this on their own. And so the work that they did together in answering those questions early on and creating their ecosystem helped them. Both of these flourish tremendously and have provided tremendous amount of value to those communities. And so that's what we're really, really most proud of. Particularly in California, there were 30 colleges participated, and look at this success. 28 plans that were submitted, and 24 were funded. That would not have happened if they didn't have the organization that they had. And that ecosystem mapping and planting and coming together is the real reason why they were successful in garnering 24 funded. It's over $6 million. And if you look at 2,700 ecosystem partners within those 30 community colleges, and that is huge. And those just kind of speak for themselves. The last example I'll give is one that I'm more familiar with personally. And I'll tell you just a little bit of a story about that. In 2003, in Arizona, the Flynn Foundation commissioned a study to talk about how Arizona needed to respond and be ready for the bioscience movement. So if you remember back then, that was the big thing. It wasn't unmanned vehicles like it is today or artificial intelligence. It was about biosciences. And in that study, we revealed a number of recommendations. And so as a community college president, mentally nude, we looked at that. And people said, well, what's a community? In fact, it was even asked at the briefing on the study, what are you guys doing here? And so we're looking at the recommendations and say where we fit, back to those questions. What is it that we can do? And so we looked at those recommendations individually and then collectively and kind of put thoughts together. And it talked about bioscience, wet lab space. Well, I was at a campus that had the most healthcare programs in the Maricopa Community College District, so that made sense. We were in a depressed area, talked about economic development and jobs and things like that, so that kind of made sense. So we began piecing this thing together. And the together ended up being a proposal as we looked at how are we actually going to do this, what are we actually going to do, was to create a form of an incubator, which ended up being the CEI, Center of Entrepreneurial Innovation. But to take back you to the development of that, we looked and said, okay, so how are we going to actually fund this thing? And we began looking around And sure enough, EDA out of Commerce had a fund that specifically spoke to this type of project. And so we put a proposal together to the EDA for $2 million. They came back and said, we'll give you $3 million. Now, that doesn't happen very often. But again, we couldn't have done that necessarily on their own. But with the $3 million coming in, they also said there was a caveat. You have to match that $3 million. So I went to my boss right here at the time, and as any good Italian, made him an offer he couldn't refuse. I said, Rufus, I got $3 million. I can give it back or we can match it. And he took those glasses off and looked at me and said, well, you know, you're a pretty smart guy. You go out and find it. No, he didn't say that. He, sure enough, we'll do that. So right away, he was on board. We brought in some other partners, the city of Phoenix, and just a little story about that. I originally went to them with the idea of the proposal and the match idea, knowing that we're going to need more than, $6, $8 million, whatever it was, and I was going to go to the chancellor last. And they said, well, yeah, we'll match you, Gene. Sure, we got a bond program coming up. And so when I went to their offices, the mayor's office, I said, Mayor Gordon, here we are, we got it. And he looked at me and said, we didn't think you'd get it. We ended up squeezing them for $750,000. Squeeze might be a nice phrase to use. And then also came on board, knowing that that thing had to get supported. As we developed it, we went to the chief, if you will, the largest healthcare provider in the state, and that was the Arizona Blue Cross and Blue Shield, who kicked in a few $100,000. But the interesting story with there was, and this is a story to learn lessons by. Rich Bowles was the CEO of Arizona Blue Cross and Blue Shield. At the ribbon cutting, when we cut the ribbon for the CEI, he said at the ribbon cutting, when Gene walked out of my office a couple years ago, I shook my head and said, man, that guy's dreaming. There's no way in heck that thing's going to happen. But we put it together in a manner in which a lot of partners. We didn't know anything about running an incubator. We hired an outside group who was specialized in that. We eventually brought them on permanently as employees. So we developed executive in residence, competitive intelligence labs. Didn't know anything about that, but knowing that if we were going to serve entrepreneurs coming into an incubator, we need to provide them services, one of which was competitive intelligence. What's going on in the world related to their particular industry? We had an IP attorney on site, again, building the ecosystem for this particular project. So entrepreneurs had an opportunity to work with an attorney related to their property, intellectual property. We had 80 pro bono mentors. Okay, think of the ecosystem. We're bringing that together. Those folks had to give 2 hours a month in order to participate, and they gladly did so, and they could not take any interest within the companies themselves. We had the makerspaces and the 3D printing and things like that, and so we were very successful both bringing live companies in and graduating them, and virtual companies as well that just bought the services. But the key there was in building the ecosystem to provide all the services, and as our tenants needed, we partnered more and more and more, and I won't go into a lot of that detail. So as time went on, they became more and more successful. Now, the next stage was, well, these folks are going to graduate. Where are they going to go? What can we do to help that? We're not in the real estate business. So we brought together an idea with some help and some support from an entity in the city of Phoenix called the Phoenix Community Alliance, which is really kind of a economic development agency within the downtown area. And with the president there, Don Kuth, and I said, Don, look, we got this huge blighted area, and this is it. If any of you have ever been, we're right across the street from Sky Harbor Airport. It's a lot better than it was. What can we do for our tenants as they graduate? They're going to need places to go. And Don, we have this huge, big area here. It's about 4 miles by 2 miles of old warehouses and all types of things. So what did we do? We created our own economic development zone called the Discovery Triangle. Now think back. We went from looking at some report and people saying, what are you guys doing here? To now we have our own economic development region. And we different partners in the community to help make that go, CBRE, which is a large commercial real estate. Pro bono mapped the whole area for us so we could go in electronically and zero in on any piece of property, what it was and what it could be and the size and everything else. An interesting story here, we had a client who went from 4 employees to 120 overnight nearly. They did the plasma stuff, when they, well, it's kind of gross, but they kind of, grind your bones and things like that, if any of you are going to give your bones up when you're no longer here. But it's big business. And so they could not be served by anything in the area there. They ended up north, about 15 miles up at Deer Valley Air Park. And because what they did was time sensitive in terms of getting their materials out or shipping their product, if you will, they had to be at Sky Harbor Airport by 2 o'clock in order to get their stuff out in a timely manner. Because they were so far away, they were losing $150,000 a month in revenue because they had to stop production, if you will. What we did is we outfitted, found a place in town, so now they came back in closer to the airport, within the triangle itself. And so if you think of all the things that we're doing here related to economic development, and we couldn't do it without the partnership and all the partnerships that we had, and as the one thing led to another in terms of what we needed to do to deliver on this, from establishing this incubator to providing the services to graduating the folks to ensuring the folks as they went out and were successful. That is the ecosystem, and it's a continuation, if you will. It just doesn't stop, right there. You have to stay with it. So now again, this is very complicated, but if you want to go look at how these things fit from a theoretical academic framework, these are some of the things that you would think of in answering the questions that I spoke of earlier. But here's some lessons, if you will, to this. If you're going to be asking a question of what the community needs and you find out, and if you're fearful of it or you walk away from it, what'd you do? You left a question that needed answering that you didn't answer. So there needs to be some fearlessness there. Maximize the partnerships. I think I've indicated that, how we did that a number of ways. And go beyond the real estate and equity. And this is what I mean. If you look at many incubators that are developed with colleges, universities, on, it's somewhat short-sighted because they take advantage of that equity or take advantage of warrants or whatever the case may be related to the success of the business. And that's good. But if that's all you do, you've stopped your ecosystem. And so some of those companies that we actually serve, that one in particular with the plasma thing, we ended up hiring a CEO for them. We ended up doing their HR for them. And we were rewarded for that. So it was more than equity, it was more than a lease, it was more than any real estate. Consider what you can do scalable as well. Don't grow too fast, and if you're behind, catch up. And that is situational, I know, but that needs to be in the back of everyone's mind. And we talked a lot about, and continue to do so here at Tarrant, doing the right things right at the right time, for the right reason, the right purpose. Make sure they're meaningful, intentional. And you've heard the thing about, fail. If you want to fail fast. It's the same thing if you look at trying to answer these questions of is it meaningful, is it an intentional act, you'll find whether it's the right path to go down or not rather quickly. And all of this, if you're going to develop your ecosystem, listen to all those that you're considering, and don't not consider anything. Everything should be on the table. It's very, very critical to continue to tie back to your mission. And some folks will say, well, economic development is not in a community college mission. Well, kind of, beg to deliver, I'm sure, to debate that, and I'm sure all of you agree that certainly that it is. And you need to run that ecosystem like a business, meaning there has to be value there in order to be involved. Much of this requires a skill set that any one of us had or perhaps grew up with, but use outside resources. Particularly, we find that project management is extremely valuable because what you're doing is you're bringing together a whole bunch of disparate folks that all have value in what you're trying to do, and you need them, but yet how do you bring them together in a coordinated manner? And within your institution, you have, and these last kind of few things kind of go together, the investment of people and culture. You have to do that to help folks see, particularly you have bosses and governing boards, that mindset as to where, how that mindset is going to influence the culture and how you go about doing business every single day. Telling stories and timing is everything. You got to bring it along for folks to be able to continue to support. But if you go back to answer those initial questions, they're very simple questions. And it's kind of like a kindergarten. You answer those questions, you plot them, and then you begin showing where the connections are, you know, in terms of, you know, the old, you got cat, and you have a picture of a cat, you know, those kinds of things, going back to, you know, the kindergarten days. But it's very similar, you know, to that in nature. So with that, I'll be happy to stop and turn it back to Dr. Glasper to facilitate any questions and answers we might have. Thank you.
So the schedule is designed for us to have questions after each presentation, and now it is your chance. There'll be 2 individuals with microphones in the audience there. What's your first question for Dr. Giovannini? Thoughts or questions? I have lights in my eyes, but I don't see any hands. Oh, we have a question over here.
At the risk of being a plant, Gene, I know the story very, very well because we've known each other for several years. Could you mention the role that bringing capital played? Because I know that was one of the innovations you had.
Say that again, Tom.
Capital, private equity, the investment opportunity, that all that activity, you know, generated the interest for money to flow into the Discovery Triangle.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, we had companies who we helped facilitate, if you will, VCs by particular industry. It started out as a bioscience, but it really ended up as an emerging technologies industry. So so as we began to tell the story in the community, we garnered more and more interest. And as that just mushrooms, because money likes to follow money. And as we, you know, told that story, we had a couple exits of 200 million, 300 million. We had, the other thing that I'm very, very proud of, and you know, I don't think I'll offend anybody here, but there were a couple other incubators in the community that were much more well-known than we were, if you will. And we ended up, not stealing, but they actually came to us and were extremely successful in doing so. And so that then bred, if you ask to Tom's question, the interest in support. In fact, the company, the plasma company, we had 2 companies. The plasma company, another one called Vision Gate, and they did 3D imaging of cancer cells. Both of those were recruited, one to North Carolina and one to Colorado, and they didn't go to either place. And they were being offered quite a bit, in large part because of the relationship we had with them, and had built that comprehensive services for them, including that opportunity for them to be capitalized.
Yes, we have a question. Another question.
I'm Bill Greenhill. I'm a trustee of the college, but
One question.
one
Bill.
question. Okay, I'm the chairman. Appleman and I are the trustees in the room, and okay, you had all these wonderful ideas. These wonderful things came together. What did your governing body? Was your governing body? How did you get them on board?
That's a question for the chancellor.
I mean, what involvement, if any, did your governing board? Did you need their support? Yes, what did you do?
Well, it's funny that we're going to ask that question, because if you didn't, I was going to ask him. So, I can share it from our perspective. And the question I was going to ask, which ties into this one, is where does the governing board fit into this notion of an ecosystem? And where do they fit in terms of taking all of these bright ideas that we come up with as administrators and faculty and staff and put their support behind it? And all of you know that it does take an opportunity for us to bridge our vision and bring our entire ecosystem together. And you bring them along at the same time. And in many cases, it's great to germinate an idea at a local college within a discovery triangle, and then he brings it to the next level within the system. But then we need to think about the strategies to take it to the board. And we bring it to the board, quite frankly, not as administrators, as much as administrators that have the support of the mayor, that have the support of the local chamber of commerce and others. We actually build that strategy, and in many cases, you bring those individuals with you because it's easier for them to sell the story than it is for you to sell it yourself. We talk about a community need, and we talk about this notion, and one of the areas that I hit in my comments was the whole question around return on investment. Community colleges are the largest provider of workforce training in our states, in our neighborhoods, in our communities. And when we talk about what this means for jobs, and the statement that I made also about access to retention, to completion, to jobs, is what it's all about. When you can demonstrate that nexus and when you can get others to share that message, then it becomes easier. But you will get some board members or trustees who will ask the question that Gene alluded to in the slides, and is it related to mission? That is a question. As we move forward in this notion of mindset, ecosystems, entrepreneurship, it is going to be related back to our mission. And the question I would ask you is, when is the last time you have updated the missions in your institutions? Community colleges are different than they were when B. Lamar Johnson started them and connected many of us in the 1960s. So mission-centric is what mission is today in the 21st century and not what it was back in 1960. Other questions? I don't see any other hands, and with that, I will ask Joe May to come up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank all of you. Beverly, it's great to be here and be a part of this. And Gene and good friends here in Fort Worth and Tarrant County, always good to be here. You know, we together we share both some blessings and some real challenges as we look at how we meet the needs of the communities that we serve in North Texas. Our mayor in Dallas likes to talk about this being, in our case, a tale of two cities. One in which you can hardly see the skyline for the cranes on the horizons, jobs being created, economic growing at an incredible rate, and on the other hand, a growing poverty level that's keeping a lot of people from being able to take advantage of the community. So we started on a journey about 5 years ago to really understand our role and how we could meet the needs of the communities that we serve within Dallas County. We looked at that from the lens of what are the opportunities that exist in our community and why do we matter in helping address those issues. And so as we began to look at it, we said, you know, the data is telling us something pretty important. It's telling us that in North Texas, because both of us, so we don't just have folks in our area, we serve a broad area, that jobs were being created at a rate of 335 a day in North Texas. Still are. We had 395 people a day moving in to take those jobs. We had then an economic disparity that was occurring at a rate that since 1999, median family incomes in our communities have dropped 19%, meaning they were not taking advantage. At the same time, the new jobs being created, virtually 99% of them required some type of credential beyond high school. So that's the challenge as we looked at how do we create a system that is designed to meet that need. And we believe that we had to evolve as an institution. That as we looked at that, the institution of community colleges as we've known it, and you look at the evolution that we see today, we started out either as career and technical education institutions in many cases or transfer. Eventually, the comprehensive model came into being as we have in Dallas. And we really then tried to do it all. And I believe that trying to do it all, trying to go it alone, being autonomous, has actually created a problem. Much that healthcare realized years ago, the comprehensive hospital couldn't really survive, that it had to be a network of hospitals and entities that could meet the needs. And as we look at today's community college, I believe that is really the structure that we have to think about. I want to talk about that from our point of view. So as we began to work with our board and others, we identified that what is our responsibility in our community. And we said, therefore, we call it the Dallas County Community College District Way, or the DCCD Way. We said, number one, it's our responsibility to help our community be successful. And by that, we mean economic success. We're very specific that if we're not increasing the size of the economy, and by the way, when you think of GDP, there's only two ways to grow it. That's either you increase the size of the workforce or you increase the productivity of the workforce. That's pretty much it. And so our role as colleges is to do both. And so how do we go about making that happen and ensure that our economy is growing? Second is we want our businesses to prosper. By that we mean create wealth. If we're not creating wealth within our community, we're not growing jobs in our community. And therefore there's not the opportunity for people to take advantage of it. And we believe if we get those two right, that we can inspire individuals to enroll in our programs and take advantage of learning opportunities in order that they can get the lifestyle that they want. And that the fourth is really a result that we then live in a community that with high quality of life so that everyone can benefit and take part in it. So that's really as we set out to look at this. So I want to share with you, as we began to work together, we began to really connect a lot of people to help solve these problems of individuals. And I'm going to see if I can, there we are. So up here, this is actually a really cleaned up version of something that's really messy when you get into it. And so what we realized is that as we do the evolution of colleges, we must move to a network model, and that means it's not about the institution, it's about the individual. And you see the head in the middle of a circle. That's 100% of our focus today. And as we looked at that, we also began to say, well, we have to understand our students better. What's tripping them up? What's getting in the way? And so we engaged a lot of our employees, about 40 of them, in the student experience study. And what we were discovering is it wasn't very often academic issues. It was life and other issues that were causing them to not be successful in their pursuit. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you see we said we have to have a starting place on this journey, and we have to have an ending place. Our end is to grow the number of individuals getting a post-secondary credential. We set a very specific goal, increase by 55,000 in our case between now and 2030, the number of individuals getting a credential. So we began to chip away at things that caused people not to be successful that were in there. And the first thing we had to do was look at our high schools. Now we had a very successful model, early college high schools. Many of you do that as well. We then decided, we had 6 of them. We had 6 for 10 years, producing amazing results with almost 60% of the graduates going on to get a post-secondary credential from those schools. But there's 6, and we have 107 high schools. So we said, how do we scale this? So we immediately began rolling out more early college high schools, P-TECH, to get the same results. And this year we have 43. So we've done that in about 3 years, from 6 to 43, to make that happen. We then began to design services to meet those needs. We said, well, number one problem we found was transportation. So we now provide all of our students public transportation passes that allows them to get there. Number 2, we began to look at that about 59% of our students were missing meals. So we brought food pantries onto our campus. We co-branded a mobile pantry so that we can meet that need. We began to work with YMCA and 38 other nonprofits and churches in the region to solve the problem. We began to really focus on our adults and what was happening to them, created something we call Work Ready U that was reaching out to them. We began to share data very differently than we had before, so that we brought in partner institutions and school districts and others so that we could see the pathway. But we realized that we weren't changing one variable. With 82% of the seniors in our area on free and reduced lunch, and that's 28,000 seniors, so 82% on free and reduced lunch, we noticed something, that there's only one thing that correlates whether or not they would go on to college, only one thing, and it wasn't grades and it wasn't rank in a class. It was if they completed the FAFSA during their senior year. That was it. And it correlated virtually 1-to-1. They complete the FAFSA, they go to college, and when we looked at the data by high school, it was completely random. Schools that you would think would have high FAFSA completion didn't. Some that did, you couldn't figure out why they had it. And it turns out that what we realized is a basic fact here. And as you look at this diagram, you'll see on here things that we didn't invent. We didn't invent food pantries. We didn't invent transportation. We didn't invent any of these. All we did was focus on the connection points were there and relentless on transitions between things that existed. Well, we realized the same problem between high school and college. No one owns the transition. No one. Occasionally you would have somebody in high school who did. Occasionally a college person might help an individual, but no one owned it for everyone, and all means all. And that's when we had the idea that looked at the Tennessee Promise. We said, you know what, that is ingenious in that it's not about a scholarship. It's about owning a transition between high school and college and how you facilitate that to make it happen by using Pell Grant money and last dollar scholarships to remove what many perceive as an insurmountable variable and a barrier, and that's financial barrier. So we did something. With our foundation at the Dallas County Community College District, did something that's unheard of. At our recommendation, leadership recommendation, we said we can't do this ourselves. We need to create a separate external entity to manage this process because it can't be about us. It has to be about the student. And if we go in as a college, it ends up being about us. So we wrote a check to an external entity, Commit, in our case, that is an educational advocacy group, and we created gave them $1.2 million to create the Dallas County Promise. They have since gone on to raise $3 million from JP Morgan Chase and others to address the issue. So I want to share with you as we then put in success coaches for these students as we brought them in, and I want to share with you kind of what happened with that. So we started this in January of this year. We went with 31 partner high schools because at the time that's how many P-Tech high schools, that's how many early college high schools we have. We're adding 12 a year, so this year it's 43, so we'll continue. Last year we had 9,600 seniors at these 31 high schools. We asked them to do three things. We asked them to go online, go to our webpage, and commit to go to college somewhere. Not with us necessarily, just go to college and complete. You had to do that by January. We asked the second thing you do is you complete the FAFSA by March. That's it, second thing, get that done. So we ended up we had been stuck at about 40% of our high school seniors completing the FAFSA. We jumped this year to 67% with that approach in that group. The third thing is by June, enroll in college somewhere. And we will work with institutions. So we hired people that are actually institutional agnostic, that we don't care where you're going, who they help. We have 5 of those. We'll add 5 more next year. But so what happened then with that as we get into to the fall semester? Let's see here. There we are. So we had our first cohort. So I want to share with you here. Again, 31 high schools, 9,300 students, 80% economically disadvantaged, 55% Hispanic, 35% Black, 10% white. So we're really working with people of color in this effort. The historic percent of going on and getting a college degree ever of any type, it was 11% from those 31 high schools. Only 11% would. One of them, Spruce, as low as 4% would go on to get a post-secondary credential. It wasn't happening. So, and a huge population, as we say, larger than 8 states. So let's look at it. 96% took the pledge. 67.5% filled out the FAFSA. This fall, at the Dallas County Community College District, at these 31 high schools, we had a 40% increase in enrollment from those schools. 40%. Where does that happen? And when we talk to the students, these were great students. These were presidents of their senior class. These were leaders. These were people, though, had been told all their life, our family doesn't have the money for you to go to school. It wasn't the truth, but they believed it. And what we've done is take that barrier away, and UNT Dallas grew 30% from those same high schools as we get there. So I want to just emphasize one thing on this as we think about innovation, and it really, if I can get, I guess, I don't know if I can go backwards a slide or not. There we are. Thank you. Innovation doesn't occur when you're working alone. You know, Walter Isaacson with the Aspen Institute wrote a book a few years back called The Innovators. And if you've read that book, you notice one common thread throughout it. Not a single technological invention occurred by a lone individual. It was always teams from multiple disciplines, areas coming together. And what we see as where we can really innovate and how we're changing what we're doing, it's because we're focused on, see, I show a dotted line. What I should show is it overlaps circles within this, because it's where we overlap is where innovation occurs within relationships. It's not everybody doing their same thing in a silo. When we partnered with DART, public transportation, they had to change what they did. We had to change what we were doing. We got better at it. We figured out why people were not taking advantage of opportunities. When we partnered with the North Texas Food Bank, we suddenly realized that we didn't know our students and we didn't understand the barriers that they were facing. I've been doing this a long time, and folks, I'll tell you, I never saw so many happy students the day we opened the food pantry at Cedar Valley College. I was stunned. I had people in tears coming up to me to share how important that was. And, you know, and it's those relationships, as we look at this, that's where innovation occurs. It's not about us. It's not about the institutions. It's about our ability to break down the barriers, to create and improve transitions between organizations. That's where innovation occurs. Thank you.
Questions for Dr. May? We have a question up front.
Just a quick detailed question. The Innovators book that you mentioned, who was the author?
Walter Isaacson.
Thank you.
Here's
Good morning. Bruce McHenry from South Mountain Community College in Maricopa. So, thank you, Dr. Glasper. So one of the things I'm hearing over the last several days here at NACE is some interesting possible dichotomy, and I'll address this to Dr. May first, but do you feel it's easier or harder to innovate in a system like you have, a district, or has an individual college? So just an example, we heard the president of Hocking College talk the other day. They're an independent. They're off and running. They're doing all kinds of cool stuff. So what do you think, harder or easier in a system or individually?
Well, you know, I'll respond. I think innovation and is hard just wherever you are in terms of that. And I'll tell you why. You know, I had the pleasure of, when I came to Dallas, one of the founding board members was still alive. She was 104 at the time. And I was able to have lunch with her. And I was struck as she was telling me the story of how she went door to door to get the names on the petition to help create the Dallas County Community College District. And what I was struck by is she knew exactly why she was doing it. She knew what problems she was solving in the community. She understood economic disparity. She understood the lack of diversity. She understood the lack of opportunity, and that it was important to the future of our community that happens. And then as we started college, Steve and I were talking earlier, you know, it was new. You had people inventing these things as you go, and they understood clearly the problems that they were trying to solve as they made that happen. I think it's harder today because now we tend to run things rather than really try to solve the problems of individuals. I think it's gotten a lot harder in that regard because we put systems in place to initially address a problem from 50 years ago, but today those same systems actually become a barrier. Autonomy, we want to be autonomy, that becomes a barrier. I think that in many cases, institutions that struggle with some resources are sometimes just a little easier because you have to. You can't do it alone. You have to involve others that are in there. But I would say that it's not necessarily the size, but it's understanding the problems of individuals of your employers, of your community. And I think the worst problem that we have is we think colleges have needs. Colleges have no needs. We're just a collection of talent. We're a collection of resources. We can form partnerships. We exist to solve the problems of others. And I think that's really the shift that we've got to get back to. We knew that when we were created, but somehow today we think that it's that we have the needs, and that's just really gets in the way of innovation occurring.
Just an observation, and Joe, great story, and it's wonderful, and it's intentful and purposeful, and that's really what I like about it. But just an observation for folks. Often when we think innovative, we're talking about technology, we're talking about something new, some new idea. And Joe put it very well. These are problems or issues that need to be solved. We need to find new ways in which to solve them. Poverty's not new, homelessness is new, hunger's not new, lack of child care, lack of transportation. Those things aren't new. Do we have the strategy and the will to innovate new strategies, new operational strategies, if you will, to address those? Because those issues, they're not problems. They're things to solve as it relates to investment. And many of us have high levels of poverty and pockets of poverty in all of the districts and colleges that we serve. And looking at them, not just from an equality standpoint, but from an equity standpoint, how do we ensure that all of our folks are going to be served to get to the same level? That's not a new issue, but many of the strategies have not solved that, or they have not sustained themselves over time. So the thing the point that I really want to make is that to innovate is not just about the latest and greatest technology thing. We have ongoing issues that have been with us for years. We need more and better innovative strategies in which to address them and have the will in which to do so. And it does then get back to telling that story and building that case as to what's our mission is. Okay, we provide bus passes too, and for our students. Well, I'm sure there's some folks out there saying, well, what are you doing that for? I mean, you're supposed to just teach those students. But again, it's solving to the core issue of what our students' needs are.
Steve, please feel free to comment on any of this if you like.
Sure. Well, as I was listening to both of the prior speakers, when you start talking about increasing completion rates and service those individuals that are hardest to serve, I think you got the focus in the right place. We need to be paying attention to the educational attainment rates in all the counties and the districts we serve, because it will show some of these pockets. And you've lined out a procedure here and a pathway for high-risk students. You're removing barriers and you're providing support. What do you anticipate in terms of a completion rate of those students compared to before you started this innovation?
Yeah, let me, great question. So I'll use an example of one of our early college high schools at W.W. Samuel High School in the Pleasant Grove area, the highest concentration of poverty in Dallas County. In 2010, the school had been slated for closure by the state for poor performance. They only were having 9% of their graduates move on to get a post-secondary credential, but they only had a 38% graduation rate. It was a failure by every single measure that you could look at. So they tried something, partnered with Eastfield College to create an early college high school. Neither the principal nor the college knew how to do it. They just figured it out as they went along. So 9% 2010. This year, 58% of the, well, let me put it, that meant a total of the high school, 40 would have earned a post-secondary credential coming out of that. So as we look this year, we had 60 graduate with an associate's degree a week before they graduated from high school at that school. This past cohort that we contract, 6 years, 58% earned a post-secondary credential. We will hit 65% of that high school. So as we scale this out now, 43, that's our goal, is to take schools that we're only getting about 11% take them up to 75% getting a post-secondary credential within the next 6 years. And as you can see, the first step is to get them enrolled. You grow 40%, now we have to be successful with, make sure that we're successful getting them through the system. So I'll just put this in perspective. 2 years ago, and folks here from Dallas know this, in the Dallas Independent School District, 18 of the 23 schools were on something called the IR list, meaning improvement required. We began partnering with them seriously, all of those 18 schools. We went with a Pathways to Technology model with each one of them, meaning we have 2 industry partners in every high school. American Airlines has 27 people at Adamson High every single day that's there working with students and scaling that out. This year, none of those schools are on that list. In fact, 6 out of those schools are now in the top 11 performing schools in the state. And that's just a 2-year turnaround, so we can have an impact.
Questions? Any questions? Yes.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Brittany Chambers. I am a representative from Generation Financial Knowledge Development, an organization that works with community colleges and universities to kind of help promote entrepreneurial learning, innovative thinking, as well as we do impact and needs assessment studies to help identify key barriers in different areas. I want to say thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I think looking at the entire network is important. I've had a few friends myself in my local community who've gone to community colleges and have often talked about bus passes, talked about the need for childcare services and such to be able to complete school. So I think those things are 2 primary and very permanent things in an array of so many others. My question for you all today is, essentially there's been a huge conversation, I think, around a lot of the technological advancements occurring in the country. But at the same time, too, I know Obama in one of the state addresses a few years back said that 2 out of 3 jobs may be outsourced to other areas due to the technological gaps in some of where the U.S. stands and performs on a worldwide level. Not only that, there's also been a huge conversation in terms of guidance counselors and peer counselors to support mental health. I know today is National Mental Health Day, and I think that a huge thing that comes into play with a lot of these conversations around, like, say, Maslow's hierarchy of needs of such, is that if the base and elementary needs of the individual aren't met, it's hard to focus on much more or less attaining those technical skills or job readiness or career readiness skills. So I wanted to ask, how do you guys feel mental health is being incorporated into this conversation, and then working in conjunction with all of the other network components that you guys spoke of? Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to respond to that. Great question, and you're exactly right. And I didn't get into all of the networks that we formed. We actually, this year, have formed several around mental health. We partnered with one organization that's providing mental health first aid training. I think we've trained 150 or so of our employees this year, and recognizing that we've also partnered with the University of Texas Southwestern, which is Health Science Center Medical School, with the College of Psychiatry. We're actually partnering on this $15 million grant, but we're building in mental health screening. This year we'll screen, we have about 80,000 credit students this fall. We'll screen 18,000 of those for mental health, and then we're using the university's resources to meet that need. So we're really scaling that out as we look at it. We also partner, it's a funny name, but look them up. There's a group out of Austin called Aunt Bertha. That's right, Aunt Bertha is the name of the company. But what they do is really remarkable. We white label and put it in our webpage so it's available to students. But it allows an individual, and you can do it as free, to put in some very basic information about yourself and what needs you have. If you're in a domestic violence situation, where are resources available? If you're hungry, where can you find food? Where can you get mental health services and others to deal with that? It's all done privately, but we do see the data, so we know we get amazing feedback in terms of what's challenging to our students and what they're looking for, and we're working with them to customize that. We're the first community college to work with them. They've normally worked with mental health agencies and hospitals and others that are there to really customize it for different groups like those struggling with mental health. Or we have about 11% homeless. So what are the needs that are there as we get into that? So there's a number of ways, but I see that frankly as a top priority of ours within the district as to how we can help our students be successful, because the numbers are a bit scary, and I could go into why what we see, but it's tragic what's going on in many people's lives.
Just a couple observations to your comments and how to think things somewhat that's been on the table for a while, or may present what we think is not a good thing. And you mentioned about outsourcing. Well, outsourcing is jobs. So who are you outsourcing to? There are going to be jobs there in order for people to do. Are we going to be responding as a culture, as a college, if you will, related to creating those jobs that have been outsourced? The other, speaking not so much to the mental health, but really an ongoing issue, is related to early learning. And if you learn to read up to third grade. After that, you read to learn. And if you can't read by third grade, you're not going to learn it. And if you don't know fractions by the sixth grade, chances are you're going to have a huge deficit. So there's these very, very fundamental issues within our communities that need addressing, not just by colleges, but it's the whole continuum. Early learning at age 2 and 3 to child care and so on. These things are all connected, and we have to see them as connected in order to provide the best, best answers or solutions to those issues. And just one point, be sure we understand what a solution may be. And very quickly, here in the Fort Worth School District, we have 83 elementary schools. Only 9 of them have, in the overall poverty rate in the Fort Worth Independent School District is 77%. In 9 of those 83 elementary schools, the poverty rate is 50% or less. That's the best, 50% or less. There's not a third grade reading level problem in those 9 schools. However, the children that are in poverty in those better schools still only read at the 29% level, or only 29% of them read at grade level by level 3. So the solution, we need better schools. These are the better schools. What folks are coming with is the disadvantage, and that gets back to the equity, if you will. Are they able to learn as those other students are in the better schools? So better schools, not necessarily the answer.
See?
I was just going to make the comment that community colleges have to accept the role of being the great equalizer for individuals with different educational levels and mental health conditions. We're the last hope for many. And experience we've had is with inmates, about 1,500 of them with serious mental health problems. When provided support, many of them can perform right up to par with regular transfer students from high school. So we don't give up. We work harder to get there. I would like to start by looking through an economic lens at a special program at Walla Walla Community College that I think embraces a lot of innovative ideas and entrepreneurial ideas. This serves as a foundation upon which the college builds programs. I think it makes the community college a key linchpin with economy. So I kind of retitled this Innovations Drive Regional Economic Transformation, the Walla Walla Wine Story. And if we step back for a minute, I see 3 challenges here in our time when I look through the economic lens: safety and security, prosperity or economic competitiveness, and environmental sustainability. And community colleges have to address all 3 of these major issues. And we're challenged to put balance and balance our resources among these competing ends. I'm going to focus on economic competitiveness, and I think this is going to relate to some things I heard earlier here. It's all about creating jobs, improving wages, and increasing the standard of living for everyone. We want to have equal opportunity. We are the equal opportunity colleges, and it's not going to happen without productivity. Productivity has three drivers that we need to be very conscious of. One is talent, the other is investment, and the third is infrastructure, which includes technology. And of course, we're here because we're a primary driver. We make a difference with this talent, but we got to be interested in what's going on in investments and infrastructure as well. How innovative and how entrepreneurial you are will determine how much productivity you have and what the wage levels are going to be. So we got to figure out how to better utilize existing resources and then attract additional resources. If you look at these three drivers, I'll focus on talent. I think the challenge is to increase educational attainment rates. And I'd mentioned earlier, these rates are available for every county in the United States. And we should take a look at that. The Illumina Foundation is doing a lot of work on this. So then you figure out where you are versus where you want to be and how you can increase access and opportunity and retention of your students to get there. It's this mindset that's helped Walla Walla, I think, really to aspire to very high levels of educational attainment in all our programs. We have completion rates in the 55% of those students that enroll. The institution finish what their intentions are. Community college leaders need to pay attention down here to this infrastructure area as well. Because if we can combine information technology and technology together, we create smart information systems. If we combine water technology with information technology skill sets for our students, we create smart water systems. So that's a very innovative strategy that adds significantly to productivity. So make talent our top priority. That can be leadership talent, be teaching talent, but it's the talent we're teaching our students. And it's changing, as this depicts. Increase higher attainment rates, emphasize STEM and other high-demand programs, and then do all you can to accelerate learning. So that's the economic framework that we build our programs on. We talked about a vision and mission statement. Here's ours. Walla Walla Community College will be a catalyst that transforms our students' lives and the communities we serve. We think we have to go to that next step and take ownership in transforming our community if it's going to be a good place for our students when they complete. So things that weren't going very well out in agricultural rural America back in the late 90s and early 2000s. NAFTA came in. We were a natural resource-based economy. All our food processing organizations got hammered. All our timber industry got hammered. Anything to do with natural resources seemed to be in a state of decline. So here we were sitting in a community that was doing pretty well, and all of a sudden it just felt like we were up against it. So the question was, the college was we said we're going to be a catalyst for change. What are we going to do? We've got to make a big change here if we're going to help this community survive and thrive into the future. So we aimed at about 4 things. We knew health was expanding. We had a big health nursing program. We doubled it over 4 years. Doubled the size of that to where we were graduating nearly 300 full-time RN students. And we created a pathway with Washington State University so they could get their applied science degree and master's degree at Walla Walla Community College. That was step 1. Step 2, we had a partner with John Deere Corporation. We expanded that partnership significantly to take on precision agriculture and to reach out and serve the northern half of California and all the Northwest. This let us get to a scale with a partner to where we could do it first class and do it right. And then there was another emerging issue in our community, and it was a critical water shortage. And it was competition for water for commercial, industrial uses, domestic uses, and for fish. The Confederated Tribes had a real problem when salmon were killed because streams were drying up. And the college stepped in and mitigated some of these misunderstandings, found common ground. And it was interesting, in 2011, the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission gave us the Leadership Award for helping out, for figuring out how to create water. We'll get more in there later. So now I want to come back to the program that I think embraces some of the criteria for innovation. And you kind of take track of them, Rufus, as I go down through here, see if we hit any of them. So we had to do something significant in the community in addition to these other things. And what we thought could be significant, we had 15 winemakers in very small operations. One of them, however, had just had their Merlot named the best Merlot in the world. And it brought a lot of attention to the community, and it brought a lot of enthusiasm in. And another winemaker entered wines in competition and did pretty darn well. So we thought, well, why not? So the college came up with this idea: we're going to develop a program to teach students how to grow the best wine grapes and make the best wine in the world. Now that's different than just coming out with a mission. Now we're going to be the very best. And you know, that vision carried us a ways. It got some resources coming our direction, but it wasn't big enough. Now we had to have a vision that included wine, food, and art. The emerging creative economy. Can you do that in a rural area like Walla Walla? And I think we proved we could. So your vision statement can be innovative. We needed place. We had no place to do this. But we had an idea and no money. And I came up with like $50,000 to hire an architect to sit with an advisory committee just to write ideas down. And 2 years later, we had this center in operation on our campus. $15 million, less than $1 million of state funds. Most of the money for this was raised in Portland, Spokane, and Seattle. Thank those organizations. They came over to our dedication of the building, a lot of these organizations, and we had a big fundraiser that night. It was the biggest fundraiser ever held in Walla Walla. So it got us off to a pretty a good start. What I learned, if you got a powerful idea and you sell that powerful idea, money will not be that big of an obstacle. So here's Walla Walla Community College students learning while creating College Cellars wine. In that facility is a commercial winery, a 3,000 case production winery ran and operated and marketed by students, selling ultra premium red wines. Now that gets into the entrepreneurial dimension of this. 3,000 cases, $250 a case, $750,000. We needed wine grapes in the community. College Cellars started vineyards and has some estate vineyards now. We didn't have enough water. That's why we had to go back and get into water management practices. But now you see the landscape in this area is changing. And if you're in TIA real estate, you can see some of your property there. We needed place for our graduates. We had 60 students we accepted into the program. Many of them were going into wineries. Some of them wanted to have their own winery. And when they came to the college, they brought resources so they could afford to. We worked with the Port of Walla Walla and got funding through Department of Commerce for 5 incubators. You needed quality food, so we created the Wine Country Culinary Institute, focusing on pairing food and wine. This program had to have the same standard in quality as the wine program, because when people come, they want an experience. They want wine, food, art. They want the culture. And we were creating culture here. This is a governor's inauguration. Notice our food truck. It's pretty interesting. We doubled the size of our performing arts programs and built a visual arts building and worked with an organization in the community that's now has 180 people just in bronze, doing bronze work in Walla Walla. And of course, all other little cottage industries start coming along, from farm to plate, golf courses, limousine services. One private investor put $33 million in the old Marcus Whitman Hotel, and it's a destination you'd be very proud to stay at when you come and visit me. So how does this work? Well, it's a high value added industry, and that's what we were looking for. When you process 300 acres of wine grapes, it generates the same revenue of 20,000 acres of 100 bushel wheat, and it's legal. Wine production contributes $4.8 billion to the Washington state economy. That's up a bit now. At this time, it was at 2015, it was $300 million we'd added to the Walla Walla community. We went from those 15 wineries to 128 by 2015. Today, we have 180. And tourism is anticipated to produce the same revenue as wine, because a wine tourist spends 2.5 times as much at their destination as the average tourist. So Michael Porter at Harvard University developed the Northern California Wine Cluster. He never did a study of that. It was a conceptual model. We took Michael's model, took it to the legislature and the industry, and got $250,000 of funding to hire some economists to implement it. So you can go online and read about the Walla Walla wine cluster now. And we found out information in terms of baselining everything, projecting where the jobs were needed, what we had, what we didn't have. What I'm saying, when you get into innovation, you want to be driven by knowledge. So you got to do your research. And, you know, I said we were short of water to expand. We needed 9,000 more acres of wine grapes is what we figure. So what happens? Could we come up with enough water for another 1,000 acres? And through irrigation efficiency studies, we got enough water set aside to do another 1,000 acres. And we did this over a 3-year period, or 9-year period. But look at the end of 9 years, the direct, indirect total, we created $90 million of additional sales and nearly 450 additional jobs. So the projection in Walla Walla without the wine industry was red. We had an early projection, which was the white line, which we thought was probably a dream, and the green is actually what's happening. We've created 10,000 jobs and $500 million in additional earnings in a small rural area. We were losing people from the community. 2000, 2005, when the center opened, it turned around. Now we have a net in-migration, and it's making quite a difference in the quality of life. So the Wine Commission's recent study, $502 million for Walla Walla. EMSI had helped us with some projections. They projected 8913 jobs. Travel and tourism up 250%. Assessed property valuation, it has doubled since 1999. And hard to find a good, affordable home anymore. That's a downside of this. But what it has done, a lot of the seasonal migrants that would have to leave now have year-round jobs, and believe me, they're pretty darn good paying jobs. So we're getting a bit of publicity on this, and this is important. When you get into innovation, you got to share your story. And the National Journal, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, PBS, they've all come for the wine story. And here they're talking about how the nation would do good to follow Walla Walla's example on putting the skilled job people back to work. But then the same year we won the Aspen Prize, the National Journal named us one of the top 50 innovators in the United States. The only institution in higher education, and it wasn't in the higher ed category, it was in the economic development category. So we reach out, I sound boastful saying making the best wines in the world. Here's the results of college cellars entering a wine right here in Dallas. It's Clark Vineyard Merlot. It won a gold medal, best of class, and top Washington wine in the Dallas wine competition. That's an international wine competition. So we took another wine to San Francisco in wine country, and it won best of class. So we've developed a reputation of being able to do pretty well. Now, we have taken one of your unemployed individuals here in Dallas and got him back to work. You might remember Drew Bledsoe. He's from Walla Walla. He was quarterback of the Cowboys. He now has double back. The only problem is you can't buy it because there's such a demand for it. In terms of innovation, I served on the Washington State Economic Development Commission, vice chair of that commission, and worked with the legislature in getting money to create 15 innovation partnership zones in Washington State. The value of partnership, the value of place, the value of an agenda, partnerships between universities and business. One of those zones in Walla Walla was by a partnership with a community college. We had a little trouble getting that in the legislation because a lot of people don't think of us as economic developers. We are economic developers. This innovation partnership zone concept won first place in the Council of State Governments innovative programs. The thing that I'm excited about is how do you sustain this when you retire? Is it going to fall apart or is it going to keep going? And that'll be my test. I think we put the infrastructure in place, and this is innovative, it's going to keep going. And it's called a community council. And this council is on fire. When it meets and they go over a report they've done or a plan they put in place, you'll have 500 people in the room. We never had anything the grassroots like that before. But they recently released a study that showed number one challenge, or number one priority, access to education. Number two, strong, diverse economy. And if you look up at D, education as a path to economic development, we did that study so our community would understand the relationship to education and economy. So here is our ecosystem, and we talked about an ecosystem. How do you create an innovation partnership zone ecosystem? A vision. Our vision fosters a healthy economy and a healthy and safe environment. Its mission is economic, environmental, and cultural sustainability. It has values of entrepreneurship, innovation, diversity, partnership. We review these things to see if we're on track. And then we have initiatives. It has water initiatives. We have energy initiatives. We have the whole hospitality industry initiatives. And then we got a lot of the typical things you'll see on the left side, like a rural center for entrepreneurship, etc. And then these are the public actors. These are our collaborators. These are the ones that we have common agendas where we're working together to make a difference, doing very innovative things. At the Water Center, there's two innovations. One, the tribe came and said, we'll put $1 million into your center if you'll create some fish labs for us. And we'll put 10 professional employees at that center doing their research. And we'll hire your students, watershed ecology graduates, to work with these PhD professionals because we are going to make a difference in the Columbia River system. And then we had another firm come in that has a very innovative idea on water quality and soil analysis, and we're incubating that firm at this water center. They're doing millions of dollars in business today. You know, the college benefits from relationships like that. Those partnerships are valuable. So here are the 12 innovations. We talked about them in my presentation. I want to point out just a couple. Number 10, first wine grape sorter. This is optical sorting of wine grapes. I don't think this is ever done outside of Walla Walla. But our faculty worked with industry in key technology to develop a sorter. We can retain only the perfect wine grapes and put the rest in another pile for another wine. So when you get going on something, this success breeds success, innovation breeds innovation. A lot of good things are happening. We brought ETS Labs, Best Wine Analysis Lab out of California, to our center on campus so our winemakers have the best information. And you know what? I think I'd just say Walla Walla now is a place where it's beautiful, cultural inspiration, outdoor adventures, small town friendliness. Rufus, I'd like to have you come and visit sometime where we could sit down over a bottle of wine and go into a little more detail, okay? So you come see me.
I think he hit quite a few on that list, didn't he? This is great. Now's your time again. Questions for Steve? Oh, right here. You can ask for the panel. Yes, please.
Okay, I'm David Meridian. I'm from Seminole State College in Florida, near Orlando, where Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse are. So my question is not really a question, it's your opinion. We have developed a program, Seminole County Public Schools, one of the middle schools, a program called Journey. Journey, it's about explore, create, and innovate. And it's for middle school. So the 6th graders, they come to explore. The 7th graders, they come to create. And by the 8th grade, they are kind of innovating. And when they get to high school, they kind of partnership with us or partner with Seminole Community College or Seminole State College. We are 4-year school now. So at the age of like 13, 14, they start, explore, create, and innovate. Do you believe, or what are your opinion is about starting so early to get the kids at that age coming to a program like that? And this is, by the way, a pilot program with one middle school, and you are trying to see if it's feasible to do it with all the Seminole County Public Schools, the middle schools. I would like to get your opinion. Thank you very much.
Just one comment to that. It's all valuable at any age. But one thing that is kind of revealing that I don't think we spend enough time with is the whole idea of jobs. What does a job look like? And if you really talk to a lot of 14, 15, 16-year-old folks, they don't know what a job is. And so in those efforts, college for kids or whatever, there really needs to be more of a focus, if you will. The end result is that, you know what? If you want to be a nurse and you don't like blood, you got a problem. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one. But what we've found most recently is that gap in young people understanding jobs and the workplace.
Let me first, Steve. I've had Walla Walla Community College wine. So you've sent me 2 bottles in about 1996 that I recall.
Oh my gosh, we got to get some more down your way.
And so that was great. Now, I think as you and I like the words that have been used today, talking about ecosystems. And you start with the end in mind, but then you have to really work both directions. One of the things that we begin to see as we work with schools that the public schools, particularly, that were the most successful, understood that job was the end goal. And they didn't just see high school graduation as the end goal, even though that's what they were getting rewarded for, but they weren't structured with that in mind. And I would say the same thing, that when I talk about transition points are the problem, it's because there's no connection between them. And coming out of middle school into high school is one area. Another area where we lose a lot of people in that pipeline. And that means you really have to go back a step into the middle school. And frankly, it leads you all the way back. I tell you, we're starting up a baccalaureate degree in early childhood because we've realized we've got to get involved at pre-K. To be able to deal with the entire pipeline. And as community colleges, there's no one else that will own that process all the way through. Everyone else is simply going to look at it through a straw of theirs. So I commend the effort, and I think I understand it's a hard sell. Internally, sometimes these, because you're going, what are you doing? That's their business. That's their role. But the fact of the matter is that it does make a difference. It's important work. Thank you.
We're open up for one question, and if you have any questions after this last one, the panel will be up here for a few minutes. We want to try to be respectful for your time. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm Amy Vance. I'm from Eastville College. I'm the Associate Dean of the STEM Division, and that's part of the Dallas County Community College District. This question is for the last panelist. We began at our school a Journeyman Brewer Certificate in 2015, and it's been highly, highly successful. We were the first one in the state of Texas as a community college to do such a program. And now we are investigating the offering of an associate's degree in brewing and distilling with a focus on the business aspect of that program. And also in incorporating the network model, looking at some of our sister colleges that have strong culinary programs to kind of do what you have done. So after your great successes and probably some pitfalls along the way that you didn't mention, what would be some of the lessons learned in starting such a venture an entrepreneurial venture such as what you did?
Well, I think if you're going to be innovative, you're going to take risk. So you got to be resilient. And I think the lesson I first learned is resiliency matters. You got to be able to overcome the naysayers, like the Attorney General when he calls and say, you can't make alcohol on campus. You can't sell it on campus, you know. So we had to deal with issues as they come along. But I think another lesson learned there is have your constituents with you, have the industry, have the hospitality industry right there so people can understand what's going on. I can remember an issue before the Washington State Legislature where we were asked, this sounds funny, but asking for legislation to allow underage students to sip and spit wine. I mean, they had to taste it, you know. And here's a state patrolman and another person testifying against. They called timeout and let me chat with them. They came back and supported us once they understood. So you can't take for granted that people don't care and that they're not going to raise questions when they can. You try to be anticipatory wherever you can be, but keep going. You know, the main thing, to see something through, you've got to have the resources and the passion and the energy to make it happen. That's what I learned on this one. But it's a lot of transferable lessons to other programs as well.
Well, thank you. Let's thank our panel, please.
It's nice to be down here with you Texans.
Good job.
Dr. Boinkies.
Yes, absolutely. We thank our panel for being with us today, and we appreciate all of you being with us as well. I wanted to thank Dr. Van Osdale, who's our Apple detective. I wanted to thank Dr. May, who's our cyclist and who threw out the baseball at the Major League ball game. I also want to thank Dr. Giovannini, who comes from a very large and close family, and Dr. Glasper, who is a hiking and poetry enthusiast. We thank all of you for being with us today. I'm sure that you will take home with you the wonderful ideas that have been shared by our panel as you move forward in your travels today and with your friends and family and colleagues as you go back to your campus. We want you to share these ideas and the enthusiasm that you see here for innovation, and know that it's a matter of following through, having that passion, and keeping at it. Thank you all today. We appreciate it. We appreciate our partners, Tarrant County College District, and our partner, NACI. I'm not sure if they're still here, but I know you have, some of you have been a part of that as well. Safe journeys, everyone. Please drive carefully and fly carefully, and have a happy day.
Thanks.
Yeah, well,